The 11th of February 2026, we had Pam Bondi testify before the House. Jasmine Crockett, Thomas Massie, and several other senators were in attendance.
Transparent president in the nation's history. And none of them asked Merrick Garland over the last 4 years one word about Jeffrey Epstein. How ironic is that? You know why? Because Donald Trump, the Dow right now is over, the Dow is over $50,000. I don't know why you're laughing.
Nigga, what? Man, this nigga got me fucked up. That's for real, nigga.
I think we should take all of this with a grain of salt because Marjorie Taylor Greene is still Marjorie Taylor Greene, right? She was key with a lot of the conspiracies around the election, January 6th. I think a lot of this is for her own personal gain, but I do find this interesting. So let's start with this clip.
Pam Bondi, she serves at the pleasure of the president and his administration, and those there are telling her, here's who you can prosecute. No, don't do this. I mean, they told her that the Epstein files, that fight to release the Epstein files came directly from President Trump. And I know a lot of people have a hard time with that, but that is the truth. He fought the hardest to stop these files from being released. And the only reason that he signed our bill that we passed in the House was because he had to. It became a massive political problem. Biggest political miscalculation in Donald Trump's career was calling this a hoax, fighting the release of it, and having Mike Johnson, the speaker, refuse to bring the bill to the floor, to the point where Thomas Massie, myself, Nancy Mason, Lauren Boebert actually had to vote with all of the Democrats to get it released.
That are emblematic of the massive failure of the DOJ to comply with the Epstein Files Transparency Act. To my right is an email that was sent by the victims' lawyers to the DOJ. It was a list of names not to redact, a list of names not to release. What did the DOJ do with this email? They released this email in the document production. Literally the worst thing you could do to the survivors, you did. And they're getting phone calls. A lot of these people didn't want to be known. And we know you touched the document because you redacted one name and you redacted the lawyer's name, but you left the survivor's name there. The next document I want to show you, that was in the title, the victims' survivors' names, all right? The title of this one is Child Sex Trafficking. Co-conspirators, fully redacted. And by the way, I'm going to unredact them here. Les Wexner is in this. Now, your your deputy attorney general said, oh, well, he appears hundreds of times in the files, but he doesn't appear in this file until I forced you to release it, where he's listed as a co-conspirator, not to tax evasion, but to child sex trafficking.
None. If there were, I would bring the case yesterday that he trafficked to other individuals.
The gentlelady from Texas is recognized.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. And to be clear, I'm not going to ask any questions of this witness because this witness has revealed that she has no intentions of answering questions. But instead, I'm going to ask some very basic questions really quickly of my colleague, Becca Ballant, if she will answer. Right or wrong, raping children?
Wrong.
Right or wrong, killing random citizens?
Definitely wrong.
Right or wrong, enriching yourself as the sitting president of the United States?
Definitely wrong.
Okay, thank you, because I probably never would have got that with our witness. Our witness, who somehow is a lawyer but does not understand how it works with witnesses. I'm not really sure what law school she went to and what all kind of cases she tried, but typically when you come into a space and somebody's a witness, then they sit there and they answer questions instead of asking questions. And then we also have this objection that we use as lawyers called non-responsive when a witness fails to actually answer the question. But nevertheless, let me address the survivors because that's exactly who they are. They are not victims, they are survivors. Let me say thank you for having more courage and moral clarity in your pinky fingers than the entire Department of Justice. We are currently the laughing stock of the world, partially because of the failed leadership within the DOJ, as we see kings and queens falling everywhere around the world. But we don't know the basics of right and wrong in this country, because it's not about partisanship. And that's why I applaud Thomas Massie, because he's the only person on the Republican side that has a backbone and knows how to stand up to corruption. But nevertheless, let me keep going. My Democratic colleagues have been attacked this entire committee hearing. They have been lied on, and frankly, the American people weren't looking for that. They were looking for answers about the corruption that they see coming from this administration. In the written testimony of this witness, of this particular witness, she stated that when she took office, she had two main goals. The first was to end the weaponization of justice, and second, to return the department to its core mission. Not only have you lied about both, you've intentionally done the exact opposite. You're spending more taxpayer resources arresting journalists than you are prosecuting pedophiles and creeps. In fact, your boss, the President of the United States, stated that this administration, quote, took the freedom of speech away. And at your direction, DOJ has arrested Don Lemon and Georgia Fort. And I might add that y'all actually had a judge that rejected y'all for trying to arrest Don Lemon before, just like the grand jury rejected y'all as it relates to Senator Kelly, just like a grand jury rejected y'all as it relates to Senator Slotkin, just like the case against Tish James was dismissed and the case against Mr. Comey was dismissed. I completely don't get how it is that you're sitting at the top of DOJ, because you don't seem to be good at your job. You're spending more taxpayer resources arresting these journalists. In fact, we know after Georgia Fort and Don Lemon were arrested, we know that there were homes of journalists that were raided. We know that threatened prosecution against students protesting your actions and forced tech companies to remove apps used to track ISIS activities. But let's circle back to you protecting pedophiles and creeps, because I want to talk about the president and his possible involvement with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, I don't know what the president might have done with Jeffrey Epstein, but unlike this administration, I believe that facts matter. So let's talk about the facts. Fact number one, Donald Trump is one of the most named people in the Epstein files. At least 5,000 files contains more than 38,000 references to Trump, his wife, or Mar-a-Lago. Fact number two, Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell made young girls available to Trump on multiple occasions. For example, according to this file, Ghislaine Maxwell presented a young girl to President Trump who spent more than 20 minutes apparently flirting with her. Here's another example. This shows notes from FBI investigators that describe Jeffrey Epstein transporting a victim to Mar-a-Lago to meet with President Trump, where he bragged to Trump that, quote, this is a good one. Now, I'm not saying that the president is a pedophile, but there is a lot of evidence in these files that suggests that he's very close friends with a lot of men who are pedophiles. What's crazy about all of this is just that this is a big cover-up, and this administration is engaged in it. In fact, this administration is complicit. But there are numerous others, like how the DOJ is attempting to obstruct justice in the investigation of the rogue agents who have murdered American citizens, or how the DOJ seized voter data from Fulton County in an attempt to steal the 2026 midterm elections, or how federal agents have Tom Homan on tape accepting a bribe and your agency killed the investigation, or how your agency is ready to give the president a $230 million payday, which is unconstitutional. The Constitution is clear. The president shall not receive any payment except his salary while in office. The fact of the matter is that you will be remembered as one of the worst attorney generals in history, an attorney general who has prioritized obstruction over justice, corruption over the law, fealty to the president over loyalty to the Constitution. And Mr. Chairman, I will yield.
Gentlelady yields. Gentleman.
Now, I want to go back to this clip from Adam Mockler. They dive into a BBC doc about the files. Do us a favor and like the video and hit that subscribe button.
And they didn't. And also, again, this has ignited new conversations around the things that we know about Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. It is crazy that there are still people willing to defend this. It's unthinkable. Take a listen to this.
To a number of sources who saw Donald Trump at the parties. Most paint a similar picture.
Just describe to us the way Donald Trump behaved at these parties.
I mean, this guy it was like a predator in action. I went to the washroom and I was going in and a girl was coming out and she kind of looked at me and I go, have you talked to that Trump guy? And she goes, yeah, as I was walking by, he's like trying to grab my ass.
We do know that he was having sex with them.
How do you know that?
Because the next day or days after we would hear about it, he'd brag about it to his friends and it would get around that he scored, maybe 1 or 2 girls at a time, which is what he loved to do.
There's no evidence that Donald Trump slept with underage girls. But what's most shocking is the age of some of the models at the parties.
There was girls, I would say 14, 15 years old, from Europe, the European girls.
They were 14 or 15?
There were girls that were 14, 15 years old, for sure. I mean, I didn't run up and say, how old are you? But they looked younger than I was, and I was 17. You just knew.
Wow. I mean, it's striking. It's sickening. I have no idea. With information like this, videos like this, I'm going to show you a couple from this documentary. But, clips like this and all the information we have and all the ups and downs, if that's even the best thing to call them, just the back and forth, I should say, with the Epstein files, that everybody is not appalled, right? They're a hoax. They're not a hoax. They exist. They don't exist. They're on my desk. Never mind. Let's stop talking about it. Okay, we'll release them, but only some of them. It's crazy. It's crazy. I'm going to get to more news, very recent news about some of this cover up from the DOJ because they're supposed to tell Congress about the redactions and they're trying to muddy the waters. We'll get to that in a second. Take a listen to this.
In the back and hearing the chaperones say, ladies, listen up. We've got someone that's going to come in and see you. Make sure you're at least covered up. All of the girls were changing, getting their bras and underwear on and getting ready to put on their opening number outfits.
So when Donald Trump walked in, there were women in there who weren't fully clothed?
Correct. Women were not fully clothed when Donald Trump came in.
And some of those women were, what, as young as 15?
Yes, 15 years old.
15 years old.
Brooke Pilling was a young model in New York. She first saw Donald Trump at a party in the late 80s. She's never spoken publicly about it before.
He said, how old are you? And I said, 17. He goes, oh, great. So you're not too old, not too young. That's just great. I remember one of the waitresses offered him a drink. He didn't take the drink, and he slapped her bottom. She was a blonde. He gave her a butt a slap, and he was very loud. He's like, don't worry, that's not your tip.
Heather Braden also saw Donald Trump at model parties in the 90s. One was in Florida. At 23, she was one of the oldest women there.
I remember particularly seeing him at a party at a house in Miami. This particular party, there were 4 men and probably 50 models.
4 men and 50 models?
That's approximately what I would remember. And I was one of the models. I mean, I felt like I was in some, I could have been very well being auctioned off in some sort of a sex slave ring. That's how I felt. I felt like a piece of meat in a meat market. What else could I feel like?
I mean, I don't know. I no words, really. No words. The most cruel and incompetent administration of all time. And the DOJ is covering this up. Right? Channel 4 News found emails in the latest Epstein files suggesting the DOJ release may just be a fraction of what exists, possibly only 2% of the material the FBI seized from his homes. 2%. Listen to this.
A Channel 4 News investigation today reveals that all those pictures, emails, videos and messages released by the Department of Justice, said to be over 3 million pages, may amount to just a fraction of the Epstein material obtained by investigators.
Why do we think that? Because these raids on Epstein's properties, his Florida mansion in 2005 and his fancy New York townhouse and sprawling luxury island in 2019, saw dozens of devices, computers, hard drives and servers bagged and tagged and brought to FBI offices for examination. Now, emails examined by Channel 4 News show investigators discussing those very devices. From the earliest stages, investigators were talking about Epstein's data totaling many, many times what has so far been released. In June 2020, one wrote, "We expect the data to be somewhere around 20 to 40 terabytes," noting that the total capacity of the devices was up to 50 terabytes. Then, as recently as last year, long after the investigations into Epstein and his associates had ended, the figures quoted remained massive. We're looking at a total of approximately 14.6 terabytes of archived data, said another email. To put that in context, it is almost 15,000 gigabytes. But now, a year on from that, the total data released, claimed to be some 300 gigabytes, accounts for just 2% of the total Epstein data that officials were discussing just last year.
And 15 terabytes of data is enormous. That is millions, tens of millions of PDF pages of documents, tens of millions easily. And we certainly do not have that much from the Department of Justice, right?